Hello, everyone. This is the last chapter of Life Among the Stars, the chapter about those who got left behind on the earth. Chapter 13 My Little Overnight Bag. A group of friends came over just to see the drone cat. We had heard a lot about them and had seen them on the vid screen, but never thought to see one in real life. I never even thought of the possibility of flying in one of those things. The cost was just astronomical, first of all, and I didn't need to go anywhere that fast, on the other hand. But right on time, as I stood there at the end of my long driveway, here it came. It wasn't shaped like a car, more like a pod. It was almost round, with several propellers in various spots surrounding the cab. It paused for a few seconds, stabilized itself, and lowered itself at the end of the driveway. I had my little overnight bag with me, so I didn't have to go back into the house. Roland, Leslie, and Fred would take turns either patrolling or staying in the little house to make sure things were safe. I doubt anything would happen to it. Thievery was very rare since we all had our basic incomes met. Penalties for crimes were nightmarish for the same reason. The society had provided, so they saw no reason for anyone to steal anything that was just a luxury item. Talk about a luxury item. I looked at that cab. It slowly lowered itself onto the street just outside of my property. I turned to a small crowd that had gathered by then and gave them a nod. Wish me luck. If this thing crashes, I don't know what will happen. The door opened. Sheila was sitting in the back relaxing. She looked like she had been reading a pad book. She smiled and waved me in. I crawled into the back beside her. When the door closed, it began to warn people to step back from the cab. The whirling of the turbines and propellers began, and we slowly lifted off into the clear blue sky. Everything looked so small out of my window. The neighborhood, which had been the center of my life, just disappeared out of view as if it hadn't existed. I wondered if the same would happen with my life. I looked over at Sheila. This must have been routine to her. She continued to read her book. She spoke without really looking away from it. We should be at the airport soon. We'll be taking a flat. Shouldn't take us any time to get there. A flat, I repeated back. What is a flat? She looked at me and smiled. Oh, I'm sorry. A flat is a saucer plane. Oh, okay. You'll get used to hearing slang like that soon. We're going to jump, meaning shooting up into space and back down, I said, using the rotation of the Earth to speed us up. Yes, that's it. And using our engines to fold just a little bit of space from point A to point B up there to aid in our speed. Is that possible? Oh, of course. Most people just don't think about it because they aren't in a hurry. The essentials have to be able to get to places fast and do a lot of traveling, so that's how they do it. You'll learn all about it. Sounds fascinating. Oh, it is. Gets boring after a while, all the traveling. That's why I left the family business and started working on the local level. There are benefits to both. Later, you can figure out which you prefer. I looked out the window. Looks like we're moving pretty fast in this thing. A straight line to the airport. We should be there in about 5 minutes. Sit back and relax and let you read your book, I said with a smile. She grinned and started reading again. Soon we found ourselves hovering over the airport waiting for instructions. The computer was, that is, we had little to do with the flying. It quickly moved to a smaller landing field and landed on the tarmac next to a shiny flat, almost 30 feet in diameter. We stepped out, got our few bags, and were met by a tall woman and man wearing red bands on their arms who escorted us to the plane. They took our bags and loaded them up top and then went into the cockpit. Welcome, the woman's voice said. We will be leaving in a few moments. Drinks will be prepared through the computer-enhanced robot. A small, round robot about the size of a trash can began to spin around to make its presence known. Just tell Marcus what you would like, and it will provide every convenience possible. Please strap in and prepare for liftoff. You can then remove your seat belts. Bing, they won't help you anyway if this thing crashes. Have a joyful, safe flight. We looked at each other. Humor, Sheila said. New programming for joking and humor. I shook my head. As promised, the flat slowly lifted and began to climb at a rapid speed upwards. Marcus stood there unaffected. Of course, how would a trash can be affected by gravity? We shot upwards as I hung on for life, and then we broke free of the atmosphere to no gravity. Marcus came rolling along on his magnetic coasters, offering us drinks and snacks. I hadn't had dinner, so I ate something and had a strong drink. Sheila, so used to this type of thing, took a soft drink and just continued to read. After about 15 minutes, we were told that we were going to have jump to folding. All I experienced was a quick blink. It seemed that everything, all reality, just blinked out and then came back again. But we were standing still when it came back. We began to quickly descend. I watched in horror as we hurled down towards the ground. The little specks on the ground grew faster and faster into buildings, roads, and sidewalks. Then we began to slow down and touched softly on the ground in the middle of a circle. I could see another pod sitting there and waiting. Welcome to France. We hope you have had a joyful ride. Please disembark and go to the drone cab waiting. The door to the left, that was sealed, began to release air, and it swung open on its hinges. We walked out onto the tarmac and went straight to the drone cab waiting on the tarmac. There was another robot cab. We climbed in, the propellers began to rotate and took us up into the evening sky. Before sunset, we arrived at a beautiful bed and breakfast in the countryside. There was a minister there and a few witnesses and guests out on the balcony. We were led outside. The air was warm and breezy. The sun was just about to set. I looked at Sheila. She looked beautiful. I guess anyone would be in such a beautiful place. I looked around at the trees, flowers, the beautiful gardens groomed to mimic nature as much as possible. For the first time, I could see her confidence crack. She looked nervous. I took her hand for the first time. I reached into my breast pocket and handed 2 diamond rings to the attendant, one for the wedding and one to replace the engagement ring I had given. Noticing what I was doing, she began to spin the ring on her finger. She reached into her pocket and handed a wedding band to the other attendant. The ceremony was beautiful. We said our vows and exchanged rings as the sky was bathed in red and soft breezes were blowing. We could hear soft music. A concert was going on for many of the other guests. I held her hand as we walked in. We went to the bar and listened to the music. Everything seemed so quiet, even though the music blared all around us. The whole thing seemed like a fantasy that I was just passing through instead of being part of. I opened my eyes and it was all gone. What happened? Roland asked. I don't know, Kathy said. The implant stopped working right. I went too fast. I looked at them. My wooziness began to clear. What happened? What are you doing here? This is just a dream, Kathy said. Go back to sleep. Oops. Yeah, oops, Roland said, glaring at her. I felt myself slipping away, and then I was there again in the bar. What happened? I asked. What do you mean, what happened? Seems like I was somewhere else for a few moments. Somewhere else? What's wrong? I don't know. Seemed like I was on a table and Roland, Kathy, and some other ALFs were standing there all around me. What? What do you mean? Let's get upstairs, she said. Before I could answer, she pulled out her phone and punched in some numbers. We need our room secured, she said. We continued to the elevator. I began to feel a bit woozy again. She punched a few buttons on the phone. It had a damping app. I felt all right again. Somebody's trying to hack you, she said. What do you mean by that? You can't hack a person. You are an essential now. I don't know how they found out that fast. You would be surprised what people can do. We arrived at our floor, left the elevator, and entered into the room. She only disengaged her phone when we were in. She closed the door and leaned with her back against it. I stood there waiting for an explanation. Welcome to my world, she said. Let me get us a drink. She walked over to the bar. There were some glasses. She opened up the cabinet and there were several little mini drinks, the kind that usually cost more than they are worth in hotels. Martini? She asked over her shoulder. Sure, I said, walking over to her. What's going on, honey? She grinned. Yes, there are others who want to rule this world, you know. We are not alone. You mean aliens or something? What would aliens want to do with us? We've been fighting against them for almost 5,000 years. They have been trying to control this planet for a long time. Why do you think the Essentials are sending so many humans off-world to start new colonies? Why do you think we have so many ALFs here in the place of humans? They demanded that we shrink the amount of people here on Earth so it would be more controllable. Through the slow increase of toxicity in the air, they wanted to increase the CO2 content and the SO4 to the point where they could breathe more easily. They want our resources. This planet is full of many unspoiled resources. We have a lot of water, a lot of food, and diversity, and it is healthy since we reduced our population. Our hope was that with the additional ALFs, we could stave off their mind control techniques and fight against them. But even that is dangerous. She handed me a drink. So let me get this straight. We've been having a secret war with extraterrestrials for the last 5,000 years and last few hundred years. What? We were feeling each other out. During the 1900s, the crooked governments made pacts with some to get technology to fight wars. They aligned themselves with the wrong ones. After the foolishness of trying to create a sun in a bottle and almost destroying the whole planet, we were threatened with a total takeover and we had to negotiate. We agreed to depopulate the earth of as many people as we could. But there was a loophole, and that's where the ALFs come in. I can't believe this. I took a drink from her hand and sat on the sofa. She sat in a stuffed chair adjacent to it. Welcome to the world of high politics and the world of the essentials. Believe me, we had no desire to pull you into this and to pull you in so quickly and deeply. But we don't have a choice, I guess. Honey, she said. She smiled. I shook my head and laughed a bit. Welcome to the real world, she said. Now I have to call my father and see what the next steps are. We have to find a way to protect you from their telepathy. Most likely we will inject nanos into your brain, and you should be alright. What? It's either that or you become a babbling idiot or a robot doing whatever they tell you through subtle manipulation. I saw some of the ALFs when I opened my eyes, I said. Let me know who they are. Just because they say they are ALFs doesn't mean they are. Or they were really even there. In the meantime, I have to call my father. During our honeymoon? It's an emergency. What did you expect? A honeymoon, I said. She smiled. Oh, we have plenty of time for that. She hit the speed dial. She began to pace while talking. I sat back and finished my drink. I decided to take a little nap right there. I felt someone tapping me on the shoulder. Wake up, she said. Daddy says congratulations. He's sending someone with an injection as soon as possible. Things should be all right. Hello, Mr. Hightower, I said loud enough for him to hear me. She laughed. He said, forget calling him Mr. Hightower. Called him Baron or Dad. He said you're trapped in this crazy family now, so no need for him to act normal anymore. Someone will be here later on tonight with the shot, and he's coming tomorrow. We're on our honeymoon, I complained. Yes, but this is really an emergency, so let's consummate this thing and get it over with. I could hear her father saying something on the other end of the phone that I couldn't make out. She shook her head. She hung up. He's so old-fashioned. Me too. You could be a little more romantic. Come with me and I'll show you romantic. In fact, I'll show you romantic right here. I'd like to see that. I must admit, I did see it. Jump to the next scene. I lay in bed quite pleased with myself when the doorbell rang. I threw on my robe and went to answer. Sheila just rolled over, still asleep. I made my way to the door and opened the front door. There was a tall man there, dressed in black, with a white shirt and black tie. He had a red band on his right arm, noting that he was an ALF. He wore sunglasses at night, which I thought was pretty strange. His skin was dark, very dark. He carried a briefcase. I have a delivery for you. May I come in? Sure, I said. This should be quick. Don't worry. It won't hurt a bit. I sat on the sofa. He sat on the adjacent chair. Just roll up your sleeve. He reached into the bag and pulled out a needle. I need to tell you a little bit about this needle. These are nanos. They should enter into your body. They can send out impulses to nullify any attempt of them to influence you or attain knowledge from you telepathically. He looked around the room and then continued to speak more softly. The way they do it is by dampening the emotions they tap into to control you. Most of the negative emotions like anger or fear, maybe even desires like greed or arrogance, will not be affected. Just the ones like love, compassion, sympathy, understanding. He held up the needle. Do you understand? I was totally baffled. I don't understand that at all. It was supposed to protect me from being manipulated. Why would I only have those negative feelings? So you can be manipulated by the humans. They give you a shot that projects you. It protects you from ETs, but it also makes you less human. So you do the bidding of those who only want power and control. That is what the nano injections do. But you have friends. He tapped the red band. This is a different formula that can block out the effects of the telepathy and leave all of your feelings intact. But if you take it, you have to pretend as though you took the other one. The agenda here is to make you into an essential. That is how they become so cruel. It is to make you live the way they do. But like I said, you have friends in high places. He tapped the band again. So the question is, do you trust me or them? Do you trust us enough to take what we prepared for you, or do you trust them enough to take what they prepared? I have both. Which do you want? He held up the needle. To remain human, or to cut off a little of your humanity so you can climb the ladder without feeling any guilt or empathy? He tapped the little container in the briefcase. The question is, who do you trust, them or us? I looked at him. I thought about the world. I thought about how violent it was from one generation to the next. I thought about the strong men and the ones who had no feelings, the one who caused death and mayhem and then could go to sleep at night with no problem. I let my mind drift back as I thought about the struggles I had in my life. Did I want to become a monster? I heard Sheila coming out of the bedroom. She stood in the doorway. I'll take what you have, I said quickly. He looked at her and then back to me. Good, he said loud enough for her to hear. You choose success. She smiled as I felt the needle go in. Millions of nanobots went in, moving through my bloodstream, flooding my brain as they passed through the brain barrier. And I felt no change in my emotions whatsoever. Sheila came over and put her hand on my shoulder. The man smiled and closed his little briefcase. Good evening, ma'am. It's all been taken care of. He went to the door, opened it, and left. I'm so happy, she grinned. I knew you would choose us. Welcome. Now you are an essential. For you and me, the sky is the limit. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew that I was in very, very deep cover in a war that had probably been happening since the beginning of time. And I really didn't know where Sheila or Baron stood. And that is the end of this reading. Thank you for being with us and hearing this short story. You can get a copy of this book on Amazon.com because it is an anthology with many interesting stories that all carry interesting lessons that support practical spirituality and ways of becoming whole, empowered, and still being loving, kind, and peaceful. To find any information, just go to the links below. Namaste, everyone.